Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Matty B, as we wait for him to see if he can hop on here. So I'm going to keep the video as is as we go through, so I guess he's not really here. But whenever he's able to join, I'll switch it back, or if I give up before then, and just end it before he gets on. But we want to talk first about the NFL over the past weekend. My Green Bay Packers, things are starting to happen for them to the point where they're able to make the playoffs. And going into the season, I think a lot of people thought they would repeat. I think they were 13-3 last year, able to get Aaron Rodgers back. They lost a lot of pieces on offense. It's taken time to really get things to gel. And that's the one part where you have to be playing good football in the playoffs. And even at the end of the year, some of the teams right now are starting to stumble down the stretch. And there are others that I want to talk about where it's like, are they going to be able to make a run? Green Bay right now seems like they're going to go ahead and make a run. Some other teams, like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I know they're in first right now in the NFC South. I know they have my man Tom Brady, but they do not look good. I don't know what is going on with their team. Some people blamed it on like the defense. The defense, I picked in fantasy. I thought it was a great pick. They've fallen apart. Tom Brady can't keep the offense moving to the point where the defense is able to stay fresh and put the pressure on. Somehow, they're able to win these games. I thought going against Trace McSorley, a quarterback that hasn't played much for Arizona, coming out and really just putting the pressure on him, and let's take this game away. Let's take the Tampa Bay and let's clinch a lead in this NFC South going into the next weekend, where I think a win over the Panthers clinches everything. So they needed the win against Arizona, and they weren't able to get it in regulation. I think it went to overtime, if I'm remembering exactly, where Tampa Bay was able to drive down. They had a chance to score a touchdown and just win it. And instead, they had to settle for the field goal. And it was going through where they end up winning. They get the tie. I think the Cardinals got the ball first in the overtime. And I'm looking at the play-by-play now. Let's take a look and see. But I think why did they have this as a game cast? So inside the end, so the end of the fourth quarter, Arizona gets the ball first. After Tampa Bay scored with their field goal, they had another chance. All they had to do was drive down and get a field goal. Arizona's not going to do it, and they had to punt. And then in overtime, they get it. They drive 66 yards, it looks like, and they're able to get that field goal and kind of settle down and just get the win. And now I have no confidence in them. There's no confidence going into this last week game where they're playing Carolina to get the win and clinch a playoff spot. Would I be shocked if it happened? No. They're supposed to do it. They're at home. Carolina's coming in. Carolina's coming in hot. Not something I expected to say. But Carolina's been playing pretty good. And they've won a couple of games. The issue with them, losing to the Steelers. So they lose to the Steelers last week, which pushes the Steelers towards the playoff spot. Kind of kicks Carolina down a notch. Otherwise, they would be tied with Tampa Bay right now. Instead of having a chance for Tampa Bay to get the tie, both teams have a losing record. So it's not even a strong division. They're bad. The division winner could have a losing record. Tampa Bay could theoretically beat the Panthers and then lose to whomever they play that last weekend and clinch it. Carolina would have to win against Tampa Bay and then win again. And I don't know if they have the tiebreaker. I would assume that they would at that point. But crazier things that have happened. I think they're both 3-1 right now. So if Carolina were to win out, I think they would have the edge over Tampa Bay because they would be handing them another division loss and kind of going through. The conference, Tampa Bay's ahead of. And if that's the first tiebreaker, I'm not sure. I think it's division first, though. So Carolina would get in over Tampa Bay. It's a very, very big game. And like I said, it's kind of momentum-based. Tampa Bay has been playing so bad. Tom Brady's been checking a lot of passes down to Godwin, which I love. Have him on my fantasy team. He's a player that I hope has a big game. Made it to the championship. I don't trust the Tampa Bay defense. I don't. So we have that where is Tampa Bay going to go ahead and be able to take that next step? I don't know. My worry is even if they make the playoffs, they're actually... No, I'm looking at it a little bit wrong. So I think they would have to play the Cowboys. And that could be a great matchup for them. But I'm not sure. Like, the Cowboys have been playing hot and cold right now. And it's the one thing where, okay, as we go into this final weekend, if you're Tampa Bay, clinch, get into a playoff game. I think it would be a home game for them. And try to push it out. Now, the Cowboys have a chance, I think, to at least make that number one seed, if I'm not mistaken. They would need, although they might need some help, because they do have the tiebreaker, I think, against the Eagles. So they would need the Eagles to lose 2 games. And then the Cowboys would have to win both games. If Philadelphia wins, I think they clinch well, no, they wouldn't clinch. It depends on the Vikings. But San Francisco's up there too. They're hot. Right now, the Eagles have about a 1-game lead on both, or no, just the Vikings, and a 2-game lead on the Niners and the Cowboys. So that game's coming in to affect seeding a little bit. It would be crazy to think if Philadelphia would lose 2 games. I know Jalen Hurts is out. I think, again, Gardner Minshew played well, and they came in and had some offense, right, in that game against the Cowboys, and they just fell a little bit short. So you're going in to play the Saints and the Giants. You don't have your number one quarterback, most likely. I think they have enough weapons to get it done. I think the Eagles are going to end up being the number one seed. I'm not really sold on the Vikings. I don't know what their deal is and how they're going forward. Like, hey, we're going to do this, and this is what we're trying to get out of it. But the Vikings seem to not be able to have consistency where when you get killed by the Cowboys 40-3, and then you lose to the Lions. I know the Lions have been playing hot too, up until their last loss. It's like they were on the driving seat, right? Because you're looking at a playoff seeding right now where potentially overall Lions are fighting for a spot, the Seahawks are fighting for a spot, and the Packers are fighting for a spot along with Carolina. Now, Carolina is mainly division-based at this point. The Packers have to play the Vikings. If the Packers beat them, I think the Packers have a great chance of making it in. I'm not sold on Washington. The one thing that's giving them an edge right now is they have that stupid tie with the Giants that's putting them both in the playoffs, where the Giants have to play the Colts and they also have to play the Eagles, and that Eagles game could be for the number one playoff seed. So they might get a full strength Eagles. I don't know how long Hurts is out. I think it's a throwing shoulder that he landed on awkwardly. The Giants play the Colts. The Colts look bad. I'm lukewarm on Jeff Saturday. I know a lot of players like him. He's an old player. Played with Peyton Manning. We hear about it all the time. But sometimes that doesn't work out, right? You have to have the head coach mentality to get it done. And I'm not sure. I actually wouldn't even mind going forward, like if both of these teams somehow made it out. I just don't think it's possible because of the way the schedule is. The Green Bay plays the Lions the last week of the season. So that Lions-Green Bay game could decide the final playoff spot. All right, so right now the Seahawks have the edge over both of the teams because of their head-to-head win or whatever. They have to play the Jets and the Rams. I could also see the Seahawks winning out. And so I wouldn't be surprised if the seeding changed. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it ended up being Tampa Bay dropping out and the Panthers making it, Giants dropping out and the Seahawks getting their spot, and then the Commanders dropping out and the Lions getting that spot. Or hell, if the Packers beat them, do the Packers get that bump? Packers have to get through the Vikings first, though. And Washington has to get another win. Otherwise, I think they fall behind and they're not in the driver's seat anymore. So the Giants and the Commanders, they control their own destiny. They do not play each other. Washington has to play the Browns and then the Cowboys, who, again, could be fighting for that number 1 seed. And I would have to say that is worth it just to go ahead and get in that spot. I don't think they clinched the division. No, they haven't yet. So the Cowboys still have that chance where if they win out and the Eagles drop 2, the Cowboys would get to avoid playing Tom Brady in the first round. And I think that would be worth it. I really do. I don't think any other quarterback, I mean, if the Panthers end up beating them, then it's not as bad because you're playing Sam Darnold, but you never want to play Tom Brady. You never do. Like, I wouldn't want to play him early in that spot, right? So let's go ahead and see what all we can get done going forward and see which team's going to make it. But I have a good feeling that we're going to see some changes after this next weekend, just based on momentum and what teams are hot in the NFC. On to the AFC side. Same type of deal. I'm not confident in the Steelers right now. I'm also not confident in the Titans. The Jaguars have been playing so hot, and I've been riding them in fantasy with Trevor Lawrence. I mentioned him last week, and how he's the guy that I go ahead and put all of my credit into. If he wins and the Jaguars play well, I'll probably win the championship. The other downside is I'm playing against a team that has the Chiefs players, and right now the Chiefs are playing for that number 1 seed. They also have a chance of avoiding or getting that extra bye week, but I also wonder, like, do they get an early win or an early lead and then take players out to rest of them? I don't know if they can. Historically, they've rested players, but they're playing a Broncos team that is a gigantic mess right now. The Broncos are so bad that they fired their coach, didn't even let him finish the year. They're trying to put something together. The Russell Wilson deal would never work out. I said that weeks ago. There's no way that is going to work out, right? So you go there and he takes all the money. They're locked into him for 4 years. They need a coach that can come in and almost overhaul their team to give it a run-first approach where he has the weapons. He's not able to throw to them. The offense is bad. Now, do they rally? That could also play a factor in the championship round for fantasy this week. I'm also worried about the Chargers. I have Austin Eckler. A lot of people do, right? And they're locked into a playoff spot. Now, do they want to win to avoid playing the Chiefs? Most likely, right? I think you try to win instead of resting players this week, and you really try to push it. I think that's who they really go for, because there's a big divide where right now the Ravens have that 5 seed, and they would get to play Jacksonville. I think the Chargers would rather have that position, because I was a little worried coming in thinking, well, the Chargers locked up their spot. What's really causing them to push through? They're playing the Rams this week, and then they get the Broncos the last week, which at this point you would have to think is a win. Like, I mark it as a win for the Chiefs too. So the Chiefs and Chargers, the Broncos are going to end the season 0-2. And if they do get a win, I would be surprised. Especially if they beat the Chiefs somehow, I would just go ahead and give the interim coach the full-time coaching job, because they've looked that bad. And maybe getting him out of the way, some teams seem to turn it around. But, like, that's a hope and a prayer for me. And anyone that's playing the Chiefs players, in fantasy this week because I think they're lined up to just light it up. And I hate to say it because I was so close for a regular season championship, and Stevenson got hurt, and he never came back in the game after like making one catch to try it out. If he would have been able to score a couple of points, I could be in the championship game with him healthy and with a better spot, knowing that, like, hey, at least I won something this year. But to come up close in both the regular season and the actual championship game would be a sad year for me. And that's what I'm looking at right now. Just looking at the projections that they have for Mahomes, they're projecting 20 for him. His average is like 24. Now, maybe they're projecting a little bit lower because they're not sure how much he's going to play. But that's the one position where it's like, okay, what is Denver really going to do to stop him? I don't know. Like last time they played Denver, let's see, he's put up 20 points. He did have 3 interceptions. And so maybe that's what I need. He threw 3 touchdowns. Is it going to be enough? Like, do they just give him a couple touchdowns and then coast him? Travis Kelce would be the other one that I'm up against. He only had 11 points last time they played Denver. They're projecting him down to 16. And maybe that's the one thing where you're looking at it and the projections are a little bit off. Just some extra stats here. The guy I'm playing, his team average for the season is 133 points a week. My team averaged 137. I've been hotter. I think the matchups are not to my advantage. And Derrick Henry right now is questionable. If he doesn't play, that could really throw a wrench in my plans. Because he's my guy that I rely on. He plays on Thursday night. And they have him as a limited participant. And they're thinking that he's going to come back. They need to win, right? That's what he needs to do. He's ready to play. He said that was his quote. I don't think they can really sit him out. They were in the playoff spot. They're a game back now. Actually, they're tied with Jacksonville. So if the Titans were to win and the Jacksonville Jaguars were able to choke down the stretch, they would be right back in it. They do not. They do play the last game of the year. Jacksonville's playing the Texans. So they basically need... I'm looking to see if they have the tiebreaker. I think it would come down to Jacksonville's game this week. So Tennessee could theoretically have a chance at the tiebreaker by winning, or actually just winning out. Like, you win out or you try to get that game up. Yeah, I don't know if they would have the tiebreaker, but that's what they need to do. This Cowboy game is very important for them. They don't want the Jaguars to get into a heads-up game. I don't think they would have the tiebreaker. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this game doesn't matter. But to me, I think it does, because you're trying to make the playoff spot. Even if you lose to Jacksonville, you win, and you're close enough to maybe having a chance to sneak in with tiebreakers. I don't think they would have the tiebreaker, though. They do have one over Pittsburgh. The other teams they would be concerned with are the Jets and New England. And then, of course, the Dolphins they would be tied with. I don't know who would have that tiebreaker. So the AFC is a little bit more complex. Speaking of momentum that I talked about earlier, you have the Dolphins that are going down. The Patriots are so bad that I've mentioned Stevenson. I don't even know if I should play him. That's how bad they have been. Now they're playing the Dolphins, and it's almost like it's a must-win for them. They lost 20-7 last time, and they really couldn't do anything against them. I know it's a different Dolphins team right now, and I forgot to mention it at the top of the show, but Tua, another concussion. He did not look right. I talked about the Packers winning and that being a big win. That basically advanced me to the championship. After the performance of the Jaguars, which Trevor Lawrence played well, but Christian Kirk did not get many opportunities, and then Stevenson shit the bed. Like I said, I don't trust him, so I don't even know if I can play him, because if I end up... My team still almost scored the most in the league last week on the strength of Devonta Smith. Really, he gave me the win. And he has a chance, again, they're underestimating him in this week's matchup. They need a big game. Everyone's going to, it's kind of like the thing where, are they going to let Smith beat you? Or are they going to focus on him now and let A.J. Brown beat them? That's the one thing that they're looking at going forward. What are teams going to do to decide that matchup? Because the Eagles have to win. Because if they don't win, they're going to lose that spot. And they could very well be playing an opening round playoff game against Tom Brady, which I don't think any team wants to do, no matter how bad Tampa Bay has looked. You don't want to give Tom Brady a spot. Arizona gave him how many chances on, I think it was Christmas Day that game was. They kept giving him chances, and you have to realize that after a couple of times, Tom Brady's going to take advantage of those chances and get the win. They're just going to get the win. There's no way that he's not going to go ahead and jump up and get at least down the field a little bit for a field goal opportunity, which is what they did to win. I don't know what's up with Mike Evans, though. Mike Evans, it seemed like he was a little bit off with Tom Brady. Some of Tom Brady's throws to him, though, were under, which I think there were like 2 interceptions maybe, where it looked like Mike Evans had a step, or at least a play where if the ball's thrown a little bit further, he catches it, or at least is able to try to make a play. The balls were so underthrown that Mike Evans really couldn't do anything. At least it looked to me, where he couldn't do anything, and the defender cut underneath, jumped up, made the catch or the interception, and then that was it. Right? He went ahead, got the interception, and took that next step. Where if Evans maybe could have broke this up, it might have been a little bit different, and maybe the game wouldn't have been as tight, went to overtime or whatever. But again, I don't know if Mike Evans could have made those plays. I think Tom Brady just underthrew the ball, and as you go down the season where they've been relying on him, they're not really running the ball. They're throwing the ball to Fournette, which again, it's like a pitch count for a pitcher. Tom Brady can't be throwing this many times down the stretch. He's too old. He's like 45 years old. So as much as they're relying on him, for him to just be throwing the ball for 4,000 yards, like, it's just not doable. He can't do it forever. He's getting too old, and I think he's starting to wear down the stretch because his QBR's down. His completion percentage is high, but like I said, the reason for that, too many checkdowns. Like, they're not running the ball effectively. They're throwing 48 times a game, 44, 55, 54, 43. Like, you're throwing a ton in each of these games. And then you're looking at it and you're almost like, is he going to go ahead and take that next step? I don't know. Because I'm not sure how much more they can rely on him to really fix the passing offense. They keep saying, like, oh, it's going to gel. They're going to take the next step. Just wait for it. Once things start clicking, I don't know if they're going to. I just don't. It's almost like the Russell Wilson thing. People were like, oh, well, it's going to start clicking eventually. No, they fired their coach, and they moved on. So, I don't know. Same with the Steelers. Might as well talk about them now. They're having issues with their play calling, and I still don't have a definitive answer. Because I don't know. Like I said, my gut says no, they're not going to make the playoffs. They have to play the Ravens and they play the Browns. The Browns would love nothing more than to knock the Steelers out of the playoffs. That would be their Super Bowl at this point. Keeping the Steelers at home, and they would love it. The Steelers have to win, which is the difference between the NFC. Like right now, there's only a half game divide. There's no clear win and try to get the tiebreaker like in the AFC. If those other teams drop a game and the Packers win out, the Packers are in. That's why I have more confidence. Same with the Lions and the Seahawks. If they win out, like, they have a chance to just be in. There's no, hey, we need this and this tiebreaker. The tie really is going to hurt the Giants and the Commanders. In the AFC, you don't have that. So the Dolphins right now, as bad as they're playing, they're still in the driver's seat because they're up a game on every other team. There's no tiebreaker in place right now. And they have the Patriots, which have also been playing bad. And then they have the Jets, who could be playing even worse, although their quarterback's coming back. And the one thing that I've noticed, because I wanted to talk about this for a while, because I was high on Zach Wilson. And right now, I think it was the phrase Sam Darnold mentioned when he came into the league with the Jets, where he's seeing ghosts. That's exactly what's happening to Zach Wilson. He's not seeing the defenders out there. He's running around. They're throwing the routes. They're catching the ball. And I don't know if they're afraid of getting hit. I don't know if he's afraid of checking down, but he doesn't check down. Something that I look through with other teams too, same with Justin Fields, is tight end usage. The Jets are playing better when Conklin's involved. And I mentioned earlier in the year that I had him on my fantasy team, and it's a crapshoot between those two teams, the Jets and the Bears. Which tight end do I play? If the Bears are winning, the tight end's involved. Like Fields is able to move the ball, check it down. He's seeing the whole field. He's not pressuring the ball. He's not doing that too often. Same with the Jets. Flacco did it better. And when Flacco went out, then Mike White came in and he started to focus a little bit more on the tight end and moving the ball around. Zach Wilson targets are like 2-1 to the tight end. And I know it's the same offense. So I wonder, like, are they trying to keep him in to block more? I don't really think that's the case because I've watched the games and there's been times where it's like, hey, throw the ball, like check it down. I said the same thing with Mac Jones. Like Stevenson had how many chances to catch the ball early in the year where he was a fantasy beast. Now, Mac Jones, it's, hey, throw the ball. No, I'm just going to throw it deep. No, I'm going to take a sack here. There was one play where Stevenson was wide open in the flat, and Mac Jones tried to like get it to him, but he was already so twisted in the pocket that it just became an easy sack. Like he knew the pressure was coming. He saw him, but he turned his body a little bit, and then he couldn't get back around to make the throw. You almost have to see it, know that they're blitzing, and it's something that Trevor Lawrence has been very good at, where he's moving the ball around. He's not focused on pushing it to Kirk or pushing it to any one guy. He's moving the ball around. He's getting it out much faster. If you watch the game, they talked about it almost the entire broadcast, how fast he's able to get the ball out now, where in his rookie campaign, he wasn't doing it. He just wasn't getting the ball out, and everyone was talking about him. Oh, is he going to be a bust? Is he going to be this or that? And now it's like, all right, look at how fast he's getting the ball out. He's making the right reads. That's what Zach Wilson needs to do. He's not doing it. Russell Wilson, not doing it. He gets sacked. The offensive line, the backup quarterback's yelling at the line to help Russell Wilson up after getting sacked and stuff. It's like, if you have to tell the team to support your quarterback, there are bigger issues, right? There's nothing that other players fighting and talking to their team that they're going to actually do. They're just not. Like, you have no way to force them to make that play, to make that team building, not really a play, but like a movement. But those are my feelings coming in. I think the locks are going to be teams that, as we look more at like the playoffs and how they're going to advance, I think the top, like the Bills, they need to have that one seed. Like, they need to make Kansas City have a tougher path through the playoffs. Whether that's ripping through Miami, or heck, the Jets could still make the playoffs, or even like a wounded Pittsburgh or something. Like, you can bring those teams in and try to have a bigger spot, but I don't know. The one thing too with the Chargers, Derwin James took that, I think it was him that came in and led with the helmet again with the brutal hit that both players got up wobbly from. He put his head down, and I saw people arguing with the NFL saying that he didn't lead with the crown. He 100% did. Do people not understand that him leading with his head like that even if the intent is to drive with the shoulders, he didn't keep his head up. If he keeps his head up, he might be able to make an adjustment last second. And we want to see big hits, but it's to the point where now it's like everyone's so hyped up on like the concussions, and did Tua have a concussion? I think I mentioned it earlier. They had the stat line where before the concussion, he had a touchdown. I'm going to bring it up real quick. So before the touchdown, or before the concussion, where they think he was concussed in the second quarter, right before the halftime, he was 9 for 12, 229 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. After he hit his head off the turf, he went 7 for 13 for 81 yards, no touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. And I think he was just a little bit off because it wasn't like they weren't having plays. And I know early on they made that one passing route where Waddle ran, like I just outran everybody, which wasn't really Tua throwing a bomb or something, but he did make a great throw on it. And they went in, got the plays, just didn't have enough. And when your quarterback's a little bit shaken up, I don't know how the NFL is going to identify it if he keeps getting concussed. It almost feels like Steve Young to me. Where as a kid, I was heartbroken. Steve Young was getting, I thought, like forced out of the league because of concussions. Like, he can keep playing. Now it's almost like, yeah, I'm glad he did step away. Right? He was on TV, like goofing around, having fun. Could you imagine if he had suffered a couple more concussions and he was having some type of neurological issue right now? Like, that would be hard to watch. And as a fan, you watch Tua and you're almost like, yeah, sure, he had the Dolphins clicking. Gets a couple concussions, he's not the same. And they're saying, like, he should sit out his career. He should just sit out. He can always come back, but I think what's happening right now is you're getting concussions too fast. Your brain's not healing. After that, the one where he was like all tensed up on the field, he should have been out the rest of the year. And now I think, like, at this point, if he comes back and plays, I don't think he's going to have a long career. Like, I think eventually they're going to just keep coming because he's not fully healing from them. And I know people might say, like, well, that's not how it works, blah, blah, blah. But some players are just bitten by injuries. If they're happening this frequently, and you can say that they're fluke things, but he's taking hits. He's hitting his head slammed down on the turf. And yeah, that might be a fluke play, but if it's happening over and over again, then there are other issues at play. The other thing I had in my notes, other than that, the head-to-head hit, and then the concussions. Let's see. The Steelers' offensive coordinator situation. I see a lot of people complaining about them not throwing the ball to certain players and stuff. Yeah, you can scheme that stuff, and maybe they can get more targets. I know Pickens had the game-winning touchdown, and that was a big play, kind of pushed them in to the playoff mode now. But with that play, it's like you can't force him the ball. The Steelers have the worst division winning percentage, which is another reason why, even if they're able to pull off a couple of wins, I don't think they're going to get the tiebreaker. I think they're kind of in last. And so you're just based over, like, all right, the conference, they played so bad in the conference, they're 3-7. Like, you're not going to overcome that. You almost need to win out and hope that every other team in front of you loses. So, like, this is what the Steelers would need. They would need the Dolphins to lose to the Patriots this week. Then they would need the Dolphins to lose to the Jets. They would need the Patriots then to beat the Dolphins, like I mentioned, and then lose to the Bills, which is doable. Then they would need the Jets right now. So the Jets, I think, with the Dolphins losing to them, so the Jets would have to beat them and lose to the Seahawks this weekend. So Seahawks are fighting for a playoff spot. And then the Titans would have to, I guess, just lose out. I guess they can get a win. It doesn't really matter if it's them or Jacksonville. They can win. So, like, they have a lot of teams that need to win their game a certain way, and then the Steelers have to win out against two of their rivals. that are playing for playoff spots. Like I said, the Chargers need to get to that 5 seed so they can play either the Jaguars or the Titans. The Ravens have to be licking their chops thinking the same thing. If they can get to a spot where they can avoid the Bengals or the Chiefs, that's what they need to do. I think, the Dolphins could win out and then kind of jump them, and then the Chargers, the same thing. I think they could both win out and then jump the Ravens if the Ravens were to lose out and get the Ravens up against the Chiefs first round, which, heck, that's a lot to play for. I wouldn't want to play the Chiefs in the first round of the playoffs. So I think it's going to be tough. I think the Ravens are going to have their A game, and the Steelers are still trying to find an identity. I wouldn't even be surprised if the Steelers lost the last 2. But like I said, they need to win them both to kind of lock it in. All right, let's take a little switch here to college football. All right, so heading into the final week of bowls, I guess it's kind of final. They kind of lumped them all together here. But we have the playoffs starting this weekend where Michigan is playing TCU in the opening game at 4 p.m. And then Georgia's playing Ohio State in the nightcap. Leading up to the game, in past seasons, I've been really into the bowl games, really zeroed in. I've talked about my picks being awful this year. Typically, I look at, and I've had success, I've won bowl pick'ems where you can see which conference is kind of doing better. And some teams are kind of playing outside that, like where a conference is bad, but one team seems to be much better. They might not have the best record, so they don't make the playoffs or whatever, but you know that they're going to win. And the one thing, too, that is going to be different going forward with these bowl games, the transfers. Players are transferring at such a high clip that teams like Michigan and Florida State are able to live in the transfer portal and bring guys in to supplement what they're building on. And I think that that's going to be a key here, where I see about people keep talking about, well, if you're getting transfers, something's wrong. But we've seen Michigan State take Kenneth Walker and him just become the premier back in the Big Ten. Look at Michigan right now with center Olu from, and that's just an abbreviation because I don't know the full name, but came from Virginia. He was predicted to be a preseason All-American. The transfer portal put him as a 4-star, which was insane to me. Because you would think that if you have a 5-star center coming in from high school, maybe they're rating it on, well, they're only going to get a year or 2 out of him or whatever. Michigan's having guys transfer in that are starters on other teams. So they're already, their lower level is, the lowest they could probably rate them is a 4-star coming in. A lot of guys, though, if you're coming in as a preseason All-American, to me, that's 5-star material. I don't know how much higher you can get it, and I know they keep talking about they need to drag transfer portals lower, but it's not like they're pulling in players that, A, have signed and haven't been able to break into playing time. Think Joe Burrow, the transfer to LSU, I don't think a lot of people would have predicted the year that he had coming from Ohio State because he wasn't really playing at Ohio State. So Ohio State claims him as well, look at our great quarterback product. They didn't really play him there. So it's kind of different where if he had been an Ohio State starter for 2 years, same with Justin Fields going from Georgia and transferring out because he wasn't really getting his shot to Ohio State. Yeah, he has the hype. He has the 5 stars coming in. Quinn Ewers is the same way. Went to Ohio State for a year, collected NIL, and then transferred. I wonder if that's going to be sort of the future, where players are coming in, highly hyped, sign their initial NIL deal, get paid. You're with the team, you do photo shoots, do whatever you need to do. That's kind of your redshirt year. You don't play. You get experience with one system, and then you transfer to where you can contribute right away. I mean, USC had success with it. There's rumors that they're going after the best players available right now, reaching out to players on Ohio State's team, which to me is insane that they would even be trying to do that. And teams have been calling out other teams on it, but it's true. They reached out to Addison from Pitt last year, And everyone, they were like denying it. And then, of course, he transferred there. So you can deny it all you want, but if there's interest and it leaks out, then it probably happened, right? You can't say like, oh, well, I don't know where people are hearing these things from, that there's an offer from so-and-so school. And then if you can get paid, and I'm on the boat here where if you're a college player, you can't go pro. I think like Maurice Claret back in the day couldn't leave Ohio State. If he was at Ohio State and he knew that he was locked in for NIL X amount of money, like 100,000 or something, let's say, we'll just be generic here. And someone said, you know what? We'll give you $1 million. You're already a known name. You're a big time player. Come play for us. We're going to pay you. We know you can't get paid at the NFL level yet. Come play with us for a year. Your draft stock's not going to really be hurt. You're already one of the top players in the country. Transfer to us. Make some money before you can go pro. And I think a lot of players are going to start to see offers like that. And maybe, just maybe, that's how some of the smaller schools can make that jump. I mean, even going to basketball, where Michigan had transfers come in from like Kentucky, where not really getting a lot of playing time, but you know that they are top talent if they're in one of like a 5-star from Kentucky transferring in to play at Michigan. I wonder if that could be an equalizer for some of these other schools where it's like, hey, you're playing at Alabama right now, but we have some boosters coming together at Pitt. You can be the guy. You can be the next Kenny Pickett, like, right? You come here, we'll hype you up. You can help us win the ACC. That's all we ask. There's going to be an expanded playoff. So it benefits schools that are a little bit smaller, like Pitt, maybe like a West Virginia, where they're not flooded with money. But if they're able to spend money, instead of spending it on college like recruits, freshmen, I almost wonder now if like the transfer portal had 700 players or whatever they said it had. It's almost to the point where they're going to have so many offers and so many players coming in that some of these teams are going to be able to fill in starters from other teams and have them play right away. And I the one negative to me is that I wonder if we're going to start seeing more of a common system across college football, much like the NFL, where players can come in 1 week and they already know the offense is being run because all the terminology is the same, because they have to keep it similar, because they know that they're taking transfers. And then other schools are doing the same thing because they know that they're taking transfers. So they're like, well, we need to be able to spin them up fast if we get them in. And some of them, I think I was trying to see what the difference could be. Like if an early enrollee is traveling with the team right now to practice, like, is that a real thing that they can do? Could a transfer theoretically sign up to play a playoff team and go through the entire playoff prep? I know they can't travel to the game, but if they're there a week early, are they able to travel to, like, where's the playoffs? I think one's in Arizona, one's in Georgia. Like, do they travel there and like a guy from Ohio State practice with the team and then do whatever, just not go to the game and then go back to Ohio after transferring there, instead of being like, hey, instead of prepping for this Cheez-It Bowl or whatever bowl we're in, why don't you go, I'm going to transfer now, early enroll, and then go do some playoff practices, get ready, see what I'm getting ready for. Because to me, that's the future. And that's why, for whatever reason, I know they're probably getting pushed because ESPN makes money off these bowl games. And I know that a lot of sports writers still, their employers are telling them like, hey, we want the bowl games. It's nice, easy content for us around the Christmas where we can just broadcast the game, not really do a lot of write-up or lead up to it. We just do the game, and then you can write about it. It's easy holiday work, right? I mean, that has to be why they're pushing it. Because otherwise, I don't know why. They're getting viewers because people are just hungry for football at this time, getting ready for like the NFL playoffs and the college football playoffs. But when the playoffs expand, no one's going to care about Buffalo, Georgia Southern. I didn't even care about the game. I've seen people try to hype it up yesterday. Like, look at how close this game is. It's like, yeah, they're two teams that are 500. Like, I think they were both 6-6 in that game going in. Why does that game matter? Why does Wisconsin, Oklahoma State tonight matter. Like, it doesn't. There's zero bearing on anything. If the Big Ten wins, awesome. Not really. I don't really care about any other school. Like, why would I care if the Big Ten wins? And that's the one thing that the SEC is kind of weird to me still, where they always cheer on their conferences. Like, why? Like, you're a South Carolina fan. Why do you care if Georgia wins the championship? Isn't that hurting you? Because that's who you have to beat now every year. Why would you want them to be championship level? Why wouldn't you want your team to be like a Clemson, where everyone in your conference kind of stinks, and if you're not good enough to make the playoffs, you just won't make it, and no one else from your conference will either. Because like Florida State's trying to get back, and Miami's trying to get back with all these top recruits, but they're still going to have to go through Clemson or whatever. And Clemson has the pedigree now, being successful in the playoffs. It's much easier looking back at like a Florida State team that's won national championships where, hey, you're in the national championship, you're playing Auburn. I think a lot of people would take that because that's a step down in team talent, right? Like if Michigan was playing TCU in the playoff or in the national championship game instead of a playoff game, people would say like, all right, well that's a lucky win or a lucky draw for Michigan, you know, because they're like TCU doesn't have the same talent that they have. So if they win, asterisk. Now it's like, oh yeah, great, you beat TCU, awesome. Now you get to play Georgia or whatever team, or Ohio State, like a team with top talent, because they're here in the playoffs. So I think teams like that have won in the past pre-playoff system, because there's only been a handful of schools that have won in the playoffs. It's a lot harder to get through. And I also think that matchups play a key part in it, because some schools, they struggle during the regular season. Look at Alabama losing to Texas A&M as much as they've done, which isn't much, but they lose to them. There's some other schools that kind of get them too, like even Auburn's able to get their number every couple of years, it seemed, in the playoff era. Where now, Alabama, if they're able to lose that game in the playoffs, they're able to get back in, out-talent other teams that they're not familiar with. In the expanded playoff, if they're adding like 3 or 4 SEC teams, there's a good chance Alabama has to beat a team that's familiar with them before they even get that far. So there's going to be more of a chance for them to slip up, and more of a chance for, if you go back to like the Boise State, Oklahoma, I think it was the Fiesta Bowl win, where they did like the Statue of Liberty and stuff. There's going to be a chance for a team to come in thinking, we have no chance. This is our national championship game, this opening round game. We're going to throw every trick play in the book. We're going to try onside kicks. We're going to do whatever we can. And maybe that's where the buys for conference champs only make a big deal. Maybe getting those teams through, where I'm saying like, hey, let them play a lower seeded team and get a home game out of it. Maybe they don't want to play a Coastal Carolina. I know they're losing right now to East Carolina. That's why I brought them up. But they were close to going undefeated like last year. And there was some other teams like, now I can't. I know I'm drawing a blank. But maybe it was a ULM, and then even Liberty, which I mentioned earlier this year, like they lost. Troy this year at 12-2. I said it. What if that game, UTSA and Troy? What if that was a play-in game, where now Troy gets to play Georgia? Okay, awesome. What if Troy comes out and is just running trick plays and onside kicks the entire time, and they're saying, we're good enough to win, but we're playing Georgia, so we better get crazy with it. To me, that would be worth watching, right? Maybe it turns into a blowout. But would it be a better game to watch than, say, Georgia blowing out Virginia or something like that? Cincinnati? I don't even know who else they would be playing. Like a team that's going to make it, like sneak it in. And I know maybe a team like that wouldn't really sneak in. Maybe they'd be playing Oregon State instead, right? But in that expanded playoff, I think we're going to see some further changes to try to balance it out, because these bowl games are going to get lost. I really don't see how they are drawing an audience of people that want to watch it. I'm going to look it up real quick and see, because to me, that's the one thing where it's like bowl game TV ratings for this year. How far are they able to jump? And right now it looks like they're up, which to me is surprising. Oh, no, that's last year where they were up, which, okay, that was going up from the COVID year, so who cares? I want to know how far they jump up. Because college football conference games, the title games this year, they dropped. Like, let's see what it said. Yep. So Georgia's win over LSU was only watched by 10 million. Michigan's win over Purdue, both of them were about 20-point wins or whatever. They averaged 10 million, right? So Michigan, Iowa last year had a million more. When they beat Ohio State, like that's even way more than that. So like Kansas State, TCU, a game that really mattered for the playoffs, people thought, had 9.4. And then the Utah and USC, which is the only game on Friday, only had 5.9 million viewers on Fox in prime time. And that's like what USC is bringing to the Big Ten. That's why I'm not too worried about like Michigan losing their premier spots when USC joins. USC doesn't have the following, right? They don't have the numbers. They're not one of the Power Five. I say Power Five is like a conference, but there's a clear top tier in college football, and USC is not it. Like they're clearly in the second tier, and in terms of money and value and viewership. The top is Bama, Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Texas. As much as you hate Texas, to me, until they really start losing viewers or whatever, which with the state that they're in, it's not really going to matter. They're kind of unrivaled there. They're like the Penn State of Texas, where if they're winning, everyone's watching, and if they're losing, everyone's watching too. That's why they had their own network, the Longhorn Network. Someone said that was offered to like Notre Dame first or whatever. Notre Dame had their deal with NBC. And then I also saw another school that someone said that there was rumors that it was offered before them. Was it Oklahoma maybe? Which to me would be crazy if Oklahoma turned it down. But I still have Oklahoma in that second tier just because they don't have the viewers. They're almost like USC, where they're in the second tier. Clearly in football pedigree alone, they would be in the top tier. But you actually have to have people watch your game, and you have to have the large alumni, the large fan base, which I just don't think Oklahoma and USC have. That's why the games average lower viewers than what the Big Ten and the SEC are pulling in. That's why Oklahoma's jumping to the SEC. If they were able to pull in the numbers by themselves, like Ohio State and Michigan do, then they wouldn't be jumping. Same with USC. If they were able to clearly be that top team, and I know I just said that as Texas jumps with them, but they were really bringing in Texas, right? That's who they wanted. Oklahoma was just there. They really would have wanted just to have Texas and Texas A&M at the same time, probably. And then Oklahoma would have been left behind. So they can thank Texas for bringing them along, and maybe it works out for them. Maybe it doesn't. At some point, when you're a big dog and your team keeps spending, like if USC keeps spending like a big dog, they'll get back to that prime time. They'll get back up there. Like Michigan and Ohio State, they're going to be there. They're going to be hyped up every year. Same with Notre Dame. Like Notre Dame and Michigan are probably more alike. They make the playoffs, might get blown out, might win. If Michigan would like win a national championship, or if Notre Dame were to win a national championship, things would even go crazier. Notre Dame's been in the playoffs more. I don't know if I would say that they're closer than Michigan. Michigan's won a national championship more recent than they have. Ohio State, too, has won one more recent. So those are the schools right there. Clemson doesn't have the viewership. They only had 3.46 million people watch the ACC championship game. And I know Clemson wasn't in contested for like the playoffs or whatever. If they would have won, they might have been in. I really don't see how they put Ohio State in over a conference champ, right? If Clemson wouldn't have lost to, was it South Carolina? I really don't see how they would have put them in over, or how they wouldn't have put them in over Ohio State. I think they would have got in. It's very clear to me that they would have got in. So that's where I think going forward, what games are bringing in millions of viewers. Yeah, you can knock out a quick couple million people that watched. Like last year, Pitt, Wake Forest had 2.6 million people. Clemson's bigger than them, not big enough to go in. So the bowl games right now, last year, the least watched one was 851,000 viewers, right? So the game this year, I think this year, if I'm reading this right, 918,000 viewers. So they're almost 1 million for the lowest bowl. Every other bowl topped 1 million, which is why they're keeping them around. That's why ESPN wants the bowl games to stay. It's an easy 1 million people to sell ads to for basically every bowl game. And then some of the bigger ones, they're able to sell even more. So that's where, going forward, are they going to be able to get some of these out of here? I don't know how they can say with parity that, hey, we have a playoff, your conference is never going to be in it. I almost wonder if the bowl games become sort of like a play-in tournament, which would allow the opening weekend to kind of be before Christmas, the play-in games. The other teams get to practice. You play the Final Four round before, because I'm looking at the schedule here. So, like, Thanksgiving weekend is the Michigan-Ohio State game. The following weekend is the conference championship game. Then we had 3 weekends, and this might not happen every year, I'm not sure. But then we had 3 weekends before the New Year's weekend. So the first weekend you could have the other teams off or whatever. I don't know if they want to have them play Christmas weekend. I don't think they've really decided that. Because Christmas might be in the middle of the week, so it might not matter. Like, you're going to have the New Year's game. So do you want that to be the week before? Because New Year's Eve, the week before, is always going to be Christmas Eve. Now, depending on how that weekend shakes up, I think they're going to do the weekend before Christmas Eve, so it would be like the 17th maybe, of having the opening round of games. You still have another week to kind of fit in. And heck, if they do it the week before Christmas Eve, I think it's too logistical, but maybe I'm wrong. Because the bowl games would be locked in, and you're trying to give them a home game. Like, they have 3 weeks to play around with. I don't know how many games they could fit in if there was like a smaller 4-team tournament to get into the playoffs from the smaller conferences. 4 teams. I mean, if it was 4 teams and both teams got in, but I think right now only the 6th conference team gets in. So you would almost have to have 2 weeks to play those 4 games. The 4, you'd have 2 matchups, a semifinals, and then you'd have a finals to see who would play the following week against whatever. That would be 3 extra weeks in a row, though. And then possibly 4 or 5 if they keep winning. And I would think that if they do a play-in smaller bowl thing, it's only going to be smaller conferences, but maybe they do go like a 24, whatever the FCS is, like 24 games or something, like 24 teams, where they're in and they're going crazy, and the schedule looks all crazy with bye weeks and not bye weeks. And I mean, they always have different champions, so maybe that is the route that they go. But going into this weekend, I think if you're a Big Ten fan, you have to feel a little bit better this year than past years of trying to get a champion in, because you have 2 teams in. The SEC, when they've gotten 2 teams in, they've gotten it done. Ohio State and Michigan they both can't lose this weekend. It would be devastating for the Big Ten if both teams went in and laid an egg. I think they have a better chance of both advancing than they do of both losing, but I could be wrong. I also think that most likely the scenario is that one of them wins. Like, if Michigan wins first, then I have a feeling that Georgia's going to beat Ohio State. I just think, I just have that feeling. Like, if Michigan crushes TCU and then Ohio State beats Georgia, then you could say, like, maybe the Big Ten's better than what other people expected. But looking through, like, the bowl results right now, there's not enough to say going into this weekend that, like, hey, how did the Big Ten fare so far in the playoffs or in the bowl games? They just haven't played yet. So we don't know. The first one starts tonight, Wisconsin and Oklahoma State. It starts in a couple minutes here. As I'm recording this, but like, if Wisconsin crushes Oklahoma State, does that mean that Michigan's going to have a better game on Saturday? Like, no, it doesn't. The Big Ten could lose all of these games and then have Michigan and Ohio State both win, and it would erase everything else that happened. Because then the Big Ten would have a national championship to claim for sure, between Ohio State and Michigan in a rematch. I think that if you're watching the games, TCU's played a lot of close games. Their fans are way more confident than I was last year watching Michigan play at Georgia in that opening round. Georgia had a clear talent advantage. Michigan has a clear talent advantage this year. That's not a knock on TCU. They have a first-year coach. I believe Sonny Dykes only been there for 1 year, unless he's been there 2. I should look that up real quick. But I think that this is his first year, and his team's built a lot on the portal. Now, that doesn't matter in the playoffs for the first round, right? I could see them beating Michigan, Ohio State winning, and then Ohio State crushing TCU and blowing them out. And then everyone says, like, well, there we go. Yeah, it was his first year, and his winning percentage in the other conferences, it wasn't that good. Like, he's never had a year this good based on transfers and getting people to buy in and stuff. I think TCU, like, it's almost like a Cinderella story where if Max Duggan was able to win all those other close games, this one might not end up being that close. That's how I felt last year with Michigan in the playoffs where, yeah, Cinderella year. If only they had a little bit of this and this, a little bit better, you know. And this year, Michigan hasn't really played a close game. I know they had the Illinois game. I really don't think people watched the games. They didn't see the injuries that Michigan had and how they were already down certain players that weren't dressed. Then ended up playing later, like Donovan Edwards. He's playing with a cast on his hand. I watched a video where it looked like he has an even smaller cast getting ready for the game this weekend. And I didn't really see Blake Corum, but like if Michigan's able to come in and not be healthy, that gives TCU a little bit of an advantage, I would think. But again, you don't know until the game actually begins who's playing or who's not. And if they get a healthy Michigan, then I would have to say that Michigan's favored anyway. That I think the Big Ten, I think we talked about this last week, I think the Big Ten's favored in a lot of their bowl games. Surprisingly. No, it's about half and half. So depending on like what you're looking at, and some of these might have been late movements, can the Big Ten get a bunch of wins and show that they're one of, if not the best conference? If they win, let's say how many bowl games are, if they win like 80% of their bowl games and get both teams to advance in the playoffs, I think it'd be clear cut to say that they are the best conference. I don't think that they are. So I think that you're going to see a lot of teams lose. And like I said, I think you're going to see one team advance. And we'll see next week how I feel about them winning the national championship. I need to see the matchup. Because if it ends up being Ohio State versus TCU, I would feel more confident in Ohio State beating TCU and winning a shootout, right? If it's Michigan versus Georgia, I don't know how confident I am that Michigan's going to be able to get the win. I think they'd be able to play them closer, but I still think that Georgia would win. It also depends on how well Ohio State plays them. And if Michigan plays Ohio State again, I think it's going to be a toss-up. Michigan's had the advantage and they've won convincingly. It's hard to do that 3 times in a row, especially twice in the same year. Whenever you're at their home field celebrating, I feel like they have to be focused. But maybe I'm wrong. I've been wrong before. So that's all I had for you today. So thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.